In August of 1862, a Union officer was surveying a battlefield for which he'd just lost a battle, and he saw a grisly scene of dead and bloated corpses all around. It was the Battle of Cedar Mountain that had just concluded. And off near a cornfield, a man from the 2nd Massachusetts, that was an extremely popular officer, who at one point in time absolutely hated the Republican Party. He was there dead on the field. Today, we're at Cedar Mountain Battlefield. We're going to tell you that story about that officer and what he did here at this field in 1862. The 7 days battles had concluded not too long before this, and the opening salvos of the Second Battle of Manassas was about to begin. Jackson was out here trying to find Pope's army, and Pope was trying to find Jackson. The only problem is Pope sends 9,000 men over here to secure this crossroads, and he didn't expect A.P. Hill's men to show up. This turns into a bloody affair. We're going to take you around here to some of these more prominent places on this battlefield that's been preserved in large part thanks to American Battlefield Trust. So around noon on August 9th of 1862, the Crittenden lane, which is this lane right here, Early's men would end up being posted inside this woodlot off into this side. And the Union soldiers, the cavalrymen, are out in this field somewhere roughly in that area. And the opening shots start here, really. Early's men start coming under fire, and they eventually maneuver their way out into this portion, and then they start making their way out into this field. And some Confederate cannons actually open up on this field too. So the fight really gets kicked off right here, where this gated area and this whole open road section is of Crittenden Lane. William Blackstone Williams was a young man from Massachusetts, and he was raised in an area called Jamaica Plain. He grew up with private teachers that taught him how to draw, mathematics, and eventually became an engineer. Became such a good engineer that he ends up working in the railroad systems out west and makes his way down to Mexico. He works through building a system for that area down there, and when that falls through, he goes over to Europe. He spends time in Europe traveling around. Eventually, he makes his way back to the United States in 1858, just before the war starts. Now, he's got some strong opinions about this conflict before it kicks off. He believes that the Republican Party and the agitation, as he puts it, of the question of slavery is the reason why everything is turning the way it's turning. He blames the rebellion on the Republican Party, even though he's from the North, which is kind of a strange turn of events. It almost sounds like a copperhead. But when the war kicks off, he decides he's going to throw his hat into the ring and he enlists and becomes an officer with the Company E of the 2nd Massachusetts. That's how he ends up on this battlefield. Now, standing here right now, I'm actually in the position of where Early's men would have been. Earlier on, I was over there. Early's men are going to make their way out to this field directly ahead. We're going to continue to follow this trail around and see what all this battlefield has to offer. Now, I must confess, this is the first time I've ever been to this battlefield. So, for all you battlefield nerds out there that like to travel around and see these places, if you can remember the first time you went to Gettysburg or Antietam or Chancellorsville and got to see these places firsthand, that's the excitement I have right now out here on this field. It's pretty cool being here for the first time. The American Battlefield Trust has put signs out here on this battlefield for you to be able to kind of tour and see what all was out here. On this particular sign, there is a map, and it shows the road that's directly behind us here that stretches out towards Cedar Mountain itself. And you can see the road there that intersects, and then it goes straight across the street there, and that hill on the other side. Over here is where Taliaferro Early is placed, and it's off towards Crittenden. You can see 12th Georgia, 52nd Virginia, 56th, 25th, 31st, 13th, and so on, all the way down through here. And then off towards there is a wheat field where Garnett's men are going to be placed. And this is off in the distance out here somewhere. So we're going to continue making our way down through here and talk about the fight that happened out here and then continue with that story. Now, the path that I'm walking right now is directly across the battlefield itself out here, and where the Confederate soldiers are placed directly behind me. Now, on this battlefield, on August 9th of 1862, Banks gets an advantage when he first gets out here, and it looks like the Confederates are going to get routed. But before too long, that reinforcement shows up. What he doesn't probably realize is his 8,000 to 9,000 soldiers are about to be facing an enemy of roughly 22,000 Confederate soldiers on this field. Jackson has a real chance out here to make some progress. This victory is costly for that Union Army and for Pope. Now, earlier we talked about General George Gordon when we were talking about the general that was surveying the field. He comes back out to the field after the fight's over, and he looks off towards a wooded area where some fence lines are and a wheat field is. And they'd lost some men in a cornfield, but they'd lost more men in that area where he's looking. And this was his old unit out there. Gordon looks around, and he sees piles of dead everywhere, and he describes it in his writing. But then he describes seeing 5 officers kind of stacked together. And amongst those officers is Blackstone Williams. Blackstone Williams was described as a gentle-speaking and very well-respected officer in his unit. The enlisted men to the officers all admired him. He was a real good leader, and it showed. But unfortunately for him, on this field here at Cedar Mountain, his body would turn up, and he would have to be shipped back home. And General George Gordon would see that. It never left his memory. Now, in between the traffic out here, they got a 1-lane road going out here now. and cars are passing over the center divider, so I'm going to try to speak with all this noise. But as you can see, this ridge line here, this is the Confederate position that we just came from. Off over there is the mountain in question, and then the woodlot that's over here, and we're crossing over this field. Well, Union soldiers, if they dare get to this position, they're going to have to go uphill towards a ridge line. I mean, look how far uphill this actually travels. It's quite the distance. And then, of course, he's anchored with a high position over here on his right-hand side. The Confederates are actually in a really good position to fight from. This is an amazing field. And even out here in the middle of May, this is the temperatures are not that bad. But on the day of the fight out here, the temperatures were reaching triple digits. These soldiers were dying of thirst when they came out here on these fields. So I can only imagine what the fight must have been like. Now, based on a photo that I've seen from the Library of Congress, I think I'm standing roughly in the same spot where the photograph was taken of Cedar Mountain Battlefield. And I'll try to put that picture up here, if I can find it, put it up on the screen for you, and show you real quick how it kind of lines up a little bit. And there would have been a line of trees right out there in front, and then the mountains in the background, and then of course all the detail of the battlefield itself with the rolling hills. But out here on this field, that Confederate line we're talking about is right out front here, stretches across the street, and currently we are in the Union position on this field. In this position, Crawford's men, Prince, and a few others from Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, and one unit from Maryland are actually going to charge across this field, and they're going to try to break those Confederates on the other side. About 9 times, from some estimates, they go across this field with pretty good luck, but they did not break the lines over there, and that leads to the massive fight that happens just a little bit later on. Here at Cedar Mountain, there are many markers out here on this field. They're pretty small. And a lot of that was basically because of Confederate veteran Daniel A. Grisly. In 1902, he ensured that these markers got installed on the field out here, and he was one of the first preservationists for the Battle of Cedar Mountain. Thanks to his work, a lot of this is here today, and also thanks to the American Battlefield Trust for saving this land forever. But it's guys like that who actually fought in the battle, who was here at the time, that we have a lot of the information that we have. I mean, look at these markers on the ground. You know, we've got an Ohio marker here. We have the 7th right here. We have 66th, 109th PA, number 4, Best's Battery, number 20, number 5, and then there's a New York marker out here somewhere, I'm pretty sure. Let's see, go around here to this side and see what we have over here. Taliaferro and Early. So these are some markers that are placed out here on the field, and obviously they weren't this close together, particularly in the fight, and we now know, based on the positioning of the troops, that they're stretched out across this field. But these markers are vitally important to this battlefield at Cedar Mountain. I mean, he even gives a tour of the field to a president out here, Roosevelt. That's pretty significant. Eventually, the old man dies, early 1900s, but this battlefield's kind of a lasting legacy to that Confederate veteran that helped preserve this land. Now, the Union Army occupied this field eventually, long after the Confederate Army had let it go. And out here on this field, roughly 405, from what I read, soldiers were buried out here, Union soldiers in unmarked graves. One was actually marked. So amongst those dead men would happen to be the man from Massachusetts. Hopefully this wind doesn't kill the sound here. One happens to be the man from Massachusetts. Somehow they were able to distinguish him, and I'm sure it was from the markings on his uniforms or what have you. But his body makes its way back home, where they hold a funeral procession for him. And there was a very poignant speech that was given at his funeral. And once we get to a good spot out here, I'll read those words for you so you can hear what they said about the man from Massachusetts that died here at Cedar Mountain Battlefield. Over here on stop number 6 of this interpretive tour is a American Battlefield Trust sign that talks about Kokoa Study, K-O-C-O-A, and it shows a map, interpretive map that talks about the terrain itself, and you can actually see the direction of the soldiers and how they spread out across this battlefield. This is the main section that we are on right now. So there's Ewell's elevated position, the Crittenden Lane, and Crittenden Gate, which was right across the field over here. And then looking back further on this map, you see the last position, Union position at the battle's conclusion. So we start over here with the Union attacking forward. Once reinforcements and everything comes in, this battle ends up wrapping its way back in this direction. And there's the conclusion of the Battle of Cedar Mountain. Terrain is extremely important for a battle, but very important for the preservation of that battlefield. Now, of course, progress had to put this road through here, and we need things like that, especially today. And a lot of these roads in some of these mountainous areas were originally here as dirt lanes, and now they're paved roads. But the battlefield itself, the land, as long as it's not completely destroyed by things like solar plants and large manufacturing companies, it pretty much remains the same. The farm lanes would look a little different. The fields would have more corn or wheat or something like that. And on many of these battlefields that the American Battlefield Trust are involved in, these fields are farmed by local farmers in some sort of a partnership. So it makes it look even more realistic. Now, coming across this field from the Union position that we were just in over here, those Union soldiers would have traveled across this field and would have been in a cornfield out here on this battlefield. And also there would have been a wheat field out here as well. So this is some pretty neat stuff, and I don't think I've ever seen a map quite like this on any battlefield across Virginia or even Pennsylvania. Captain William Blackstone Williams, Company 2nd Massachusetts Infantry, would be sent home, and a memorial service would be held for him at the Unitarian Church in Jamaica Plains. It was attended by a large group of mourners, and the pastor said of Williams, "My friends, his best eulogy cannot be spoken. It is the silent homage to his worth, of which this immense concourse of friends is the expression. It is the unbounded confidence, respect, and love of his companions in arms. It is the eternal debt which the American nation owes in his memory, and the enrollment of his name in the grand historical obituary of the peerless defenders of her institutions, her liberties, and her life." So now to get the orientation of where we are at currently, on this sign you can see Gordon, the general we were talking about, right here. And it says "you are here" and points to this location here. We're in the middle of Garnett's line over here initially, and this is Crawford's men moving across the field. Christopher C. Augur's division battled in the cornfield off to the left over here. Alpheus Williams launched his own attack across this field right here where we stand, and it was broken by a grove of trees. When Williams attacked the left flank of Jackson's line, anchored to the slope to the left and rear, it was thinly manned, and it was lacking reserves. Williams struck this point with nearly 1,500 men and crashed through the front of the line with a furious assault. Union General Samuel W. Crawford's brigade in the lead, the Federals swept onward into the exposed left flank of Jackson's men near the Crittenden Gate. Bloodied by the firefight, Augur's division, the beleaguered Confederates, began to give ground. Jackson's left flank was crushed and his center threatened. Now this is a pretty cool position to be in here, talking about the fight that's out in this area. Looks like we got ourselves a hitchhiker on the trail out here too. It's pretty amazing stuff. I haven't done this in quite a while, so let's talk some battlefield orientation if we can out here. But currently I'm standing in a position that's directly in front of where the 33rd Virginia would have been. 33rd Virginia is right behind me on a fence. The 5th Virginia beside them, the 2nd Virginia, and the 4th Virginia. on my left. So that is all out here in this position, and there would have been a fence out here that they would have posted up behind on this ridge line. Now, directly out in front, the 3rd Wisconsin is going to come across this area here, and you can see what used to be a bushy field. There was undergrowth and thorns and all kinds of stuff out there. The Wisconsin group is going to come over here, and they're going to get rejected almost immediately and run across the field. Well, the man that we're talking about is in the 2nd Massachusetts. 2nd Massachusetts is going to come across that ridge line there, and they're going to make their way up here to this ridge line, or try to at least, but they are also going to get thrown back. Now, the man that died on this field is most likely going to die somewhere out here in this field, directly in front. This is where the body is discovered by General Gordon when he comes out to the field. And he sees Mr. Williams lying down on the field with 4 other very popular officers with 2nd Massachusetts. It's pretty amazing and powerful to be in a field knowing a single individual who fought out here and who died on this field, coming across that open stretch of land there, trying to take this position where the Confederates were at. I don't think there's anything more powerful when studying history than standing in a place where it happened. Well, if trees could talk, we'd probably hear a million stories about things in history, and they would probably straighten out the stories that we tell ourselves. This is a witness tree to the Battle of Cedar Mountain. The sign out here says so, and it was a mature tree at the time, which means this was a full-grown tree out here on this field when Wisconsin came across that field right over there, along with Massachusetts, towards the Confederate soldiers. This tree survived that battle, and many, many years after, and it still stands here today as a testament to the fight and the history that's happened in and around this area. It's a pretty amazing moment that I get to walk up here to this tree and place my hand on a part of living history, real living history, at the Battle of Cedar Mountain. Back behind me there is a cemetery, and there's a Confederate soldier in there from Georgia that died on August 9th of 1862. That would be the date of the battle. I'm gonna see if I can't get some more information about that soldier and maybe come back out here and tell the Confederate story at Cedar Mountain. Now, the result out here for the Confederacy is a tactical battle. They were able to win this battle and stop the advancement of the Union troops across this area towards their ultimate destination. But Pope's men follow up across these fields, and eventually Jackson has to move out of the area. So, tactical battle overall, Pope achieves what he wants to achieve as far as moving his soldiers. But all of that leads to the Second Battle of Manassas. And everybody that knows anything about the American Civil War knows how that turns out. When you come out to the park, they have a trail map for you to follow. It takes you to all the wayside markers and the signs that you need to go to in order to learn a little bit more about this battle out here. And near the bottom of it, it talks about the casualty count. Some 1,400 Confederates and 2,400 Union soldiers were casualties out here on this field. And it mentions the total number of dead. It says something like 605 soldiers, or a little bit more than that, died out here on this field. And in the captions it says, undoubtedly are still buried on this field. Some soldiers, including that Georgia soldier over there, are still buried on this field. Some of the graves probably remain unnamed and unknown to time. So when you come walking out on this field, you have to make sure that you're staying on the paths, the trails, and paying respect to the men that died out here on these fields in combat. This is one heck of a field. It's a beautiful place. I certainly am glad that I made this this wayside stop on the way to Charlottesville. Now I thought I'd tell one last little bitty story out here, and this time it's about General Stonewall Jackson. Now, off here to my rear you can see kind of the shelf area there of Cedar Mountain. That location was pretty secure, and Jackson's over in that area, and then he hears his left actually collapsing. So he comes riding his horse back out to this area, and he's trying to get his sword out of his sheath, but it hasn't been used in a long time, and it ends up rusting into the sheath. So he takes the entire thing out, and he shakes it over top of his head, and he reaches down and he grabs colors, and he starts shaking them somewhere in the area where we're at right now, and he yells, "Stonewall is with you," or "Jackson is with you," something to that effect. He ends up effectively slowing down and stopping the troops that were retreating from the field, some of them probably from fear. But he stops them and buys enough time. A.P. Hill's men come out onto the field, and the Confederates secure a victory here at the Battle of Cedar Mountain. It's a pretty amazing story. But at the very exact same place that I'm standing right now, the 10th Maine come out to this field, and they also pay costly with their lives, slowing down the Confederates' advance as the Union soldiers make their retreat off of this field too. All around you in these woods, on this field at Cedar Mountain, heroic things happened out here with these soldiers. This is definitely one of the most awe-inspiring scenes that I've seen on a battlefield, looking across this field. And I've been to just about every Civil War battlefield there is out there. Cedar Mountain's a beautiful place. I'm certainly glad that they saved this place, and that the American Battlefield Trust partnered up and put all these signs out here to tell the story. You gotta come out here and check this place out. It's wonderful. Well, it's been a great trip out here, checking out Cedar Mountain Battlefield and learning a little bit about a soldier from Massachusetts and walking the actual ground where he died out here all those years ago in 1862. I hope you stay tuned and check out some more videos. Give us a thumbs up and a like, subscribe, all those good things. You're making our channel better. And as always, comment. Tell us how we can improve these stories or the videos. Until next time, this is History with Waffles.